What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Elevate Devotional for this week. My name is McCade. I'm the student ministry intern here on staff, and one of the things I really want you guys to know about me is how much I love the fall. I love the weather, how it cools off. I love some of the activities that you guys get to do. I am just so thrilled that it is finally fall. And one thing that we get to do this fall is these fall fun nights out at the campground. So if you've been with us the past couple Sundays, you've gotten to experience that too. And if you were with us this past week, we decorated some pumpkins. And so I decorated this guy right here. I'm pretty proud of him. And the one thing that I could really use some help with is a name. I haven't named my pumpkin yet. And so if you want to just drop it in the comments or send me a message about who I should name or what I should name my pumpkin, let me know. You could be entered for a chance to win a gift card if you come up with a creative name. So if you were with us last week, Jen opened up our series on masks. We've been starting a series on masks this October since it's getting closer to Halloween, and also with COVID, it's just the perfect blend, right? It's the perfect time to do masks. So Jen talked about how we can sometimes put on this I'm fine mask. And I don't know about you guys, but that was a message I really needed to hear. That's something that I'm so tempted to say, even when I've had a rough stretch. And let me tell you, the last couple weeks have been pretty tough for me between homecoming and school, but I have noticed that I have just been so prone to saying, I'm fine. And so being able to tear down that mask and being able to really live into who I am was something that really blessed me, and I hope it blessed you too. But this week, we're going to talk about another kind of mask, and it's the Chameleon Mask. So growing up, one of the most popular movies when I was a kid was Monsters, Inc. And it was one of my least favorite movies for one reason, and that was Randall the Chameleon. Now I'm going to put a picture of Randall up on the screen in front of me. And if you've seen this movie, you've probably seen just how creepy this villain is, how creepy this chameleon is. And so my friends would have birthday parties that were themed around Monsters, Inc. They would have watch parties for Monsters, Inc. And I refused to go to any of those. I was not about to watch that movie unless I had to, because I was so afraid of Randall. And maybe after looking at him, you'll be a little bit afraid too. But as much as we might not like the way that Randall acts in that movie or the way that Randall looks, I think a lot of us, if we're honest, are like Randall in that chameleon state more than we'd like to admit. And so there are a lot of times where we are able to blend who we are into what other people want us to be based on who we're with. And I know that I am absolutely guilty of that. I'm a people pleaser to the nth degree. If you know me, you know that I want people to be as happy as they possibly can be. And so sometimes I do things that I wouldn't normally do, but with these people, I want to keep them happy. And so I just really live into that chameleon mindset. And so one thing that I want to share with you guys before I kind of talk about my experience with that is this phrase. And that's that pleasing people is pointless, but pleasing God gives you power. Pleasing people is pointless, but pleasing God gives you power. And so one of these things that we can sometimes do as chameleons is this concept of hypocrisy. And so when I was in middle school, when I had first gotten into sixth grade, I really lived into this idea of hypocrisy. It wasn't something that I wanted to do, but it was something that I really noticed myself doing. And so I sat at a lunch table with a group of guys, and as middle school boys do, we kind of threw out jokes at each other, but it ended up becoming really targeted at our one friend, Brian. It was something that, as a group of guys, we kind of all targeted our friend Brian with these insults, these things that were really rude and cruel to say, and we didn't really mean them, but we said them anyway because that's just what we thought was funny. We thought it was funny to make these jokes. And as a Christian, as who I was, I knew that it was something that was wrong, but it was something that my friends were doing, and I wanted them to think I was cool. I was just getting into middle school. I was trying to establish who I was, and I was just glad they weren't making the jokes at me. And so I threw these jokes on Brian that I really regretted making and still regret to this day. But I want to share with you guys this passage of scripture that Jesus is talking about hypocrites. And so from Matthew chapter 23, verses 27 and 28, it says this: "Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You are like whitewashed tombs, which look beautiful on the outside, but on the inside are full of the bones of the dead and everything unclean. In the same way, on the outside, you appear to people as righteous, but on the inside, you are full of hypocrisy and wickedness." You see, as people, we can all kind of point to times in our lives where we've been hypocrites, especially as Christians. And that's one of the big questions that comes up in the topic of the church. How can you claim to love God and yet treat people like this? And the answer is that we're humans. We're flawed by nature. There's just something that's in our wiring that means that we can't be perfect. And so because of that, a lot of times we try and change who we are to live into being that better person. And don't hear me wrong, that's not a bad thing. But we also can never fully change our behavior to become perfect the way that Jesus was, because we'll never be able to change that wiring of being human. But one of the ways that I tried to change my behavior this summer, as we were trapped in the house, I moved back to Lawrenceville. So right now I'm in Atlanta, I'm at college, but when everything kind of shut down, I went back home to Lawrenceville and lived with my parents. After being away from home for 3 years, after living in Atlanta for 3 years, being off at college, it was not the easiest transition to be home. And so there were multiple times where I butted heads with my mom and dad living under the same roof. And it was one of the things that I really just wanted to change. It was one of the things I would wake up in the morning and I would be like, today is the day that I am not going to argue with mom and dad. And I'd get an hour into the day and something would come up and I'd end up in an argument with my parents and I'd walk away seething. I'd be, I was so right. And then I would realize a second later, today was supposed to be the day that we made up. Today was supposed to be the day that we didn't fight. And so no matter how much I tried to correct my behavior on my own, there was nothing that I could do. I am flawed. We all are flawed in some way. But the truth of the gospel is that no matter how far off we are as people, Christ still loves us. One of my favorite verses in all scripture is Romans 5:8, which says this, "But God demonstrates his own love for us in this, while we were still sinners, Christ died for us." Even when we're being chameleons, even when we are blending into other people's expectations, Christ still died for us. We can't change that fact. And so as we go into small groups this week, I want you to just think about, how are you being a chameleon in your life right now? And how's it going for you? Is it effective? Is it working? And what does God want for you? So come to small groups ready to share about that this week.